On behalf of the WBA, welcome to the Asia Telecom Summit. During the webinar, all attendees are on listen-only mode, but we would love you to raise questions throughout the event. You can do this by entering your questions into the questions pane on the control panel, which you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. Now let me introduce your host for today, Mr. Tiago Rodrigues, CEO of the Wireless Broadband Alliance. Tiago?
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more session of the Asia Telecom Summit. In fact, is the last session of the event, so it has been a fantastic week with great speakers and great teams along these 8 sessions. Today, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, the next generation Wi-Fi, IoT, convergence between Wi-Fi and other IoT technologies, what is the role for the LoRaWAN technologies, but as well how Wi-Fi, LoRaWAN, and 5G work together. So definitely will be a fantastic session, and we have a great lineup of speakers. Before we jump into the agenda, I just want to give an highlight to our sponsors, and once more thank you all the companies that made possible this event. So AirTies, Aptilo Network, Cisco, CommScope, Global Reach, Huawei, Intel, NetExperience, and Simeon Conductors. A big thank you for supporting this event of WBA. Our lineup of speakers for this last session on the next generation Wi-Fi and IoT brings my friend Erwin Guy, so Vice President of Marketing on Semiconductor, Dr. Vil Gibian, Principal Engineering Director of Wireless and IoT R&D at Charter Communication, Rémi Laurent, Director of Programs for Global LoRaWAN Networks Director from Semtech Corporation. As well, Dr. Derek Patterson, CTO of Boingo Wireless, Paul Duffy, Senior Technical Leader and CTO of Innovation Lab at Cisco, and Rowan Turv, Vice President of Marketing at Aptilo Networks, and as well my colleague Bruno Thomas, our Director of Programs and Project Management Office from the WBA. Okay, now that we know our great setup of speakers, the agenda of the session. So Erwin Guy will kick off with a presentation about Wi-Fi 6E and 5G benefits to accelerate this industrial IoT opportunity. After that, Dr. Vil will provide an overview of the work between Wireless Broadband Alliance and the LoRa Alliance. And then Rémi Laurent will do a deep dive on our joint trials program with LoRa Alliance. There is a fantastic set of case studies to be shared. Then we'll have presentations of the specific trials from Boingo Wireless, from Charter and Cisco, and then we'll wrap up with a panel discussion about some of the findings and the opportunities that comes from Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN technologies, and as well the bridge to 5G. And we'll finish up the session with a presentation from Aptilo. So Juan will give an highlight on the zero-touch technology that has been developed and implemented by Aptilo, specifically for IoT combining with open roaming. And then my colleague Bruno and I will do the wrap-up of the session, just to giving some highlights on our 2021 program on IoT and close this fantastic session as well. So hope you will enjoy the session. There is a lot of good content and fantastic speakers. Okay, moving on the agenda. So now we'll do a deep dive on the collaboration between WBA and the LoRa Alliance. And for that, I would like to invite Dr. Vil Gibian, to start and share with us an introduction of all the good work that these two alliances have been doing over the last 2 years.
Thank you, Tiago. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN trials webinar, part of the WBA Asia Summit, Telecom Summit here. Let me start by introducing the agenda for today. I will start by introducing the panelists, and then we will have Rémi Laurent talk about the introduction of the Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN joint trials program. And then we are illustrating some of the use cases with Boingo, with Charter and Cisco, and we will go through a short panel discussion around the value of Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN. My name is Wael Giben. I am Director of Wireless and IoT R&D at Charter Communication. For the WBA, I have the pleasure of co-chairing the IoT work group, and for the LoRa Alliance, I am the Marketing Committee Chair. We have also on the call here with us Derek Peterson, who is the CTO of Boingo Wireless, and who is also the WBA CTO group with the WBA CTO group and the WBA board co-chairman. We also have Rémi Laurent, who is with Semtech Corporation, who is Director of LoRaWAN Global Networks. And he is a WBA project leader. And for the LoRa Alliance, he is the Network Operator Forum Chair. And we also have Paul Duffy with Cisco Systems. He is the Industrial IoT CTO with the Industrial IoT CTO team. And without further ado, we'll move over to Rémi to present to us the program.
Thanks, Wael, for handing over. Good afternoon, Asia. Good morning, Europe, and over region, it will be more during the night. I'm glad to be here to present at WBA Asian Summit. And today I will give you a bit of context about the fruitful collaboration between the WBA and the LoRa Alliance. Well, next slide, please. So let's give a look at the three findings of this more than 2 years collaboration between the two alliances. First, it has become obvious that the multi-radio access network strategy has become a key driver for IoT market. Not a single technology can cover all use cases. Second, Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN leading license exam standard can cover most of massive IoT use cases, but Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN have also fruitful collaboration with other technologies, for instance, 4G and 5G. At the end of the day, to demonstrate a vision, we can do thousands of hours of communication, thousands of slides, but the vision is best implemented through real use cases. And it's exactly what we've been doing, delivering 2 white papers that we will develop in the next slides. Next slide, please, Wael. So in 2018, we decided to launch a first white paper series combining Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN. The first white paper, Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN deployment synergy, was decided. The goal here was to explore all ways to combine the two technologies. First, to identify on the key verticals all the use cases of Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN and both combined. And next, to figure out all ways of rolling out and interconnect the two technologies. It led to publish in September 2019 the first white paper with a strong impact, 25 companies and more than 2,500 downloads in a quarter. Therefore, based on that success, we decided to follow up on a more practical work focused on Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN trials. Next slide, please. Well, next slide, please. So On this second white paper, Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN trials, I think it was an obvious next step to make it more pragmatic, more real for end customers. We wanted to show evidence on how this hybrid connectivity radio option can bring business value to customers. We also had a pragmatic approach where we decided to present on one use case per slide the solution setup, and especially the benefit for customer, and of course, always to reach out to the trial company in case partners of end customer would be interested. I want to thoroughly congratulate here Carlink, Neston, Skyhook, Lacuna, Space, ABWay, Activity, Simplicity, Cisco, Boingo, Charter, and Semtech for their strong involvement, leading to publish this second white paper in November 2020. And you will have today some more details on the use cases with Charter, Cisco, and Boingo. Next slide, please. So what about the findings of this second white paper? So the multi-RAN strategy is a key driver for success, clear. It was really illustrated across the different use cases and vertical. Second, whatever you drive multi-networks on the field, you need to collect your data. That's where you make the decision. And we saw on all use cases that data is collected into the cloud where the decision is made and where you need to unify your data model. Next, we also saw at the network level that Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN networks can be mutualized in a cost-efficient way. At the cloud level, the chip level, or edge computing, I mean the gateway level. Last but not least, interconnection can be set up through multiple ways, and especially this open federation, open roaming federation that was launched to the market by the WBA in 2020. And we will see that Cisco developed an interesting connector to LoRaWAN, which is really very exciting. Next, please, Val. So when we talk about two leading global technologies, we saw it on the field. If you look at the map, we had use cases in most of region, which illustrates the fact that it's become a global game. And if you look at the vertical, we have as many use cases as verticals in a way. We could see some trials on smart city, automotive, smart building, roaming, retail, location services, and even endangered species protection in South Africa. So, Vael, now let's move on the next slide on the planning. So if we look back, we see that we started on a pace of one paper per year. In September 2019, we had this first series white paper with Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN deployment synergy. When we moved in 2020 to this Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN trials, and you know what? We envision in 2021 to have a third white paper that would more be a second version of the Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN trials, as we have demand for new contributors and new use cases. So now let me hand over to Derek from Boingo, who will give you more flavor of first use cases before moving to Paul and Vael for Charter and Cisco. Thank you.
All right, I hit the wrong button. I hit the video button instead of the audio button. Hey, everyone, good to be with you. for this WBA Alliance, LoRa Alliance discussion on what LoRa can do. As shared, I'm Derek Peterson. I'm the CTO for Boingo, and also, as most of you know, I've been pushing this idea of convergence for a long time, and I'm responsible for all the core technologies at Boingo. And my focus for the last many years has been how do we end up putting the right spectrum, the right technology for the right use case. And what we get to talk to you about today is an example that we talked about in the white paper of this smart building strategy that is needed in this converged environment. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, please, Weil. And so a little bit about Boingo. So most people know Boingo. We've been around for about 20 years, focused on providing connectivity at large venues. It was where we started. As for airports with Wi-Fi, but in those same locations, we're doing cellular, doing small cells, we're doing IoT networks, and we've expanded, of course, from those large venues, airports, stadiums, and the military bases into this multifamily business that we're in now. Very exciting. We operate over 2,000 communities around the world, serving over 300,000 residents, and with more than 1 million connected devices throughout our networks. The big point for us is always focusing in on convergence. That's Boingo's approach. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in about 5 minutes on these slides to share with you some thoughts. So next slide, please. So for Boingo, what we first do when we go into an area is we try to figure out what is the use case. And so we work with our partners, in this case, the property, to try to figure out what the right spectrum and the right technology, and then the right deployment to be able to connect not only people, but also things. And that's where LoRaWAN becomes very important, is it gives us the opportunity to connect things. And the interface between people and things is very important. And so you need to have that combined look at what you're doing there. So the position paper that was created, that was shared by Remy, is very important. Talks about the benefits of LoRaWAN and how you can end up getting that to connect in a decent way with all of the other connections that you have going on within your properties. So we're going to go over that in the next few slides. So please, next slide. Wow. So when we look at the residents, or we look at a property, there's a lot of different users. And in most locations, you've got a lot of different people with different use cases that they're trying to solve, whether you're talking, stadiums, or you're talking properties like we are today. The resident has needs, so they're one of your customers. The property has needs. They're also a very important customer of all the connectivity that's happening on these properties. And one of the things that we know is, with the pandemic and with everything else going on, is our homes need to be more than just the place where we go and relax and we play and we watch movies. We're now working from homes. We're now having packages delivered to our homes. A lot is going on inside these properties that used to not happen. The digital infrastructure needs to reflect that. And that means that there's a lot more connection happening inside that property. And when you're connecting that, we need to explore different ways of being able to make those connections happen. So whether it's personal IT or residential or property IT or some shared amenity, it's important to figure out how to provide a project and connectivity beyond Wi-Fi and include things like LoRaWAN to help out with connection with thermostats, door locks, hubs, and sensors. A lot of different ways you can connect using that technology. And so you need to think through all of those spectrums and come up with a building strategy that looks to deliver what you need using all of these technologies. And so the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of how that connection works. So the biggest thing is you're going to have sensors and lots of different things connecting. So it's kind of a sensors everywhere. And when we talk IoT in the multifamily properties, we immediately run into a bunch of different sensors trying to keep track of everything that's going on inside that property. Traditionally, weak Wi-Fi signals, because the way Wi-Fi was put into these multi-dwelling unit properties was one per room and not everywhere across in the hallways and everywhere. So now that's changing. And what's important as you start changing and moving out into the hallways and across the whole property, in the basement to manage the washers and dryers perhaps, and upstairs to manage the game rooms, you really need all of those critical sensors everywhere. And the parking garages to unlock, unlocking doors, turning on lights, all of this is happening inside these properties. And so when you combine LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi together, what you do is you get a ability to be able to cover the whole property very effectively because of the propagation that you have with LoRaWAN and the options you have on sensors, where you can end up using different types of sensors that can last 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the types of batteries you put in some of these sensors. So what our figure over here shows is it shows a multifamily property with this multiple converged architecture using 3 different components. You've got a Wi-Fi subsystem with APs, clients, remotes, etc. You've got a LoRaWAN system with gateways and sensors and a remote network and application servers set up. And then, of course, you got a common network infrastructure of cabling and Ethernet switches and all of those other parts. By having that common structure, it allows you to sit there and manage the entire different types of spectrums and technology that you're connecting. Next slide. All right, I know I said I was going to take 5 minutes. I think I'm right on that time. So here we go. One of the things that we have to realize with this last slide is when it comes to building networks, you have to focus on that efficiency and what you're trying to do, and realize that the internet and the connection is important. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create an interface, and I always like to call it the internet of me, where you're trying to get everything connected and relating to each other so that you can end up interfacing with that digital transformation you're going through. With the LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi collaboration, what it allows you to do is it allows you to bring more capability to the table so you can have more implementation and technologies and services that you can offer. So remember, connectivity is no longer just about cellular or Wi-Fi or Ethernet. We have protocols like LoRaWAN. We can end up bringing up property-wide, technology-agnostic, converged managed network solution that is a win-win for the resident, for the property owner, as well as for the IoT community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it. Next slide. Those are the few slides I had on this. Boingo is looking at LoRaWAN as we are with all technologies. And thank you for having me today. And I look forward to the conversation we're going to have in a minute. Back to you.
Yes, I had a bit of issues unmuting myself. Thank you very much, Derek, there. Really insightful. So again, my name is Wael Giben. I'm with Charter Communication, and the contribution that I'm presenting today for the white paper is about the smart light pole and how we can look at it as a true enabler of smart city applications. A little bit about Charter, because maybe we are a bit too US-centric. So we are a major American telecommunication and mass media company. We serve 41 states with 30+ million households connected through our brand name Spectrum. And with our brand name Spectrum Mobile, we've just, I would say, connected over 2 million cellular subscribers. We also serve SMEs and SMBs and government through our Spectrum Enterprise, and the initiative of Spectrum Smart City actually falls under Spectrum Enterprise. And our brand names Spectrum Reach and Networks are more for advertisement and our TV offering and channels actually. So getting to the smart city solutions that we work on and we offer, the way we look at actually smart cities is a multitude of applications and multiple verticals that we try to serve. And by serving these, we are actually serving the citizens and making their lives easier and making them more engaged with their cities. So we can look at it especially from the utilities and infrastructure, where technologies like LoRaWAN outstand there, because it's mostly connecting remote remote infrastructure that are sending every I would say now and again small payloads. So they're very I would say in line with what LoRaWAN, how LoRaWAN works. And if we look at some of these intelligent transportation and some of the use cases around public safety and digital services, it's a mix of both technology of Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN. And when we try to look at the infrastructure that is mostly deployed in the cities, we quickly came to the conclusion that the light pole is the infrastructure that is mostly deployed, and that we can look at it a little bit beyond a kind of a luminaire, and we can look at its as a real estate that we can reuse to fit it with sensors, to fit it with connectivity solutions like LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi to serve better the city and the citizens. So in the POC that we envisioned with the city of St. Pete in Florida, we have a LoRaWAN subsystem connecting a small amount of sensors, or like sensors that are generating small amount of data and that are able to connect over LoRaWAN gateways, and that can push data to a cloud application. And also we are fitting these luminaires, or these kind of light poles, with Wi-Fi access points, with also sensors like Wi-Fi cameras that can be either connected through fiber or coax, or actually through Wi-Fi as well, because they need that kind of high throughput that Wi-Fi offers. And by combining these two technologies on the same real estate of the light pole, we're able to serve multiple use cases to the citizens. And we will come outside to the use cases. But why we know that this is the right approach to address smart cities? Because when we deployed this with the city of St. Petersburg in Florida, with actually St. Pete, University of South Florida, and Spectrum Enterprise won the IDC 2020 Smart City Sustainable Infrastructure. Because as I was saying, now the light pole serves all, or at least most of the use cases where it can be sensor-based, like the light controllers, or the sensors in terms of like temperature, humidity, CO2, PM 2.5, proximity, panic buttons. But it also serves the general public by offering public Wi-Fi. It also serves the security cameras, either through Wi-Fi or directly through the coax and cable. We also serve the vertical of smart intersection, where we enable the city to have a better, I would say, understanding of the pedestrian and vehicular count, the direction of motion, and we also do video analytics to understand, to collect more data and make the city kind of make decisions based on that these factual data for their kind of urban developments. So so looking at the deployed infrastructure in the field, this is what the light pole looks like. All the sensors and the access technology are embedded within the light pole, so it's kind of easier and nicer to look for the city and for the citizens that are engaging with these devices. And the convergence, because Derek also talked a little bit about the convergence, it's very important to be able to present the data and to be able to control these devices from a single pane of glass. And this is why we think the presentation layer or the application layer can be a good convergence layer for these multiple multitude of technologies, would that be LoRaWAN, Wi-Fi. We also can talk about CBRS or private LTE. We also can talk about the cable. So everything kind of comes to a single pane of glass where the city can have a look at independently of what the technology of the underlying technology. We can look at the sensors, we can look at the data, and we can give the opportunity to the cities to make informed decisions. With that, I think I'm coming to the end of my of the contribution of Charter here to the white paper. I'd like to thank you very much for that, and hand over to Paul.
Always important to make sure you're unmuted during presentations. Thank you, Will. Thank you, everybody, for the invite. My name is Paul Duffy. I'm with Cisco Industrial IoT. Today, I'm hoping to give you an informative overview of some of the proof of concept work we've done to extend the open roaming infrastructure to things space such as LPWAN, LoRaWAN, private LTE, those types of radio access technologies. Next slide, Will, please. Here we go. Okay. As I was considering what I was going to say this morning, it struck me that probably the best way to describe this is to put the roaming issues in context with an issue that's very near and dear to all of us today globally, and that is vaccine distribution. If you look at a typical trip for a vaccine from manufacturer to a distribution center, say a pharmacy chain, that vaccine needs to be chilled. A lot of the vaccines we're talking about today need to be chilled in a refrigerated container. It starts its journey at the pharmaceutical manufacturer. That container needs to either data log or report in temperature and location at some defined interval. That access technology at the pharmaceutical manufacturer may be different from the access technology that is the transport company will be traversing through, and the regions will be traversing through as that vaccine makes its trip from the pharmaceutical manufacturer across potentially multiple RAN networks to ultimately the distribution center, which itself may have a different radio access technology. So that tracker, quote unquote, that's on the cooler for the vaccine may have a Wi-Fi tracker on it, may have a LoRaWAN reporting radio on it, might be both, and maybe intelligent know to use Wi-Fi when it can and LoRaWAN when it's available. This use case highlights the difficulty in that cooler is going to have to traverse multiple radio and access networks. Today, that's challenging. The infrastructure is not typically scalable, tends to be proprietary. And what Cisco did is to try to take the WBA open roaming technology and extend that to the thing space. Next slide, Will, please. So a quick reminder, this is the open roaming as we know it today, which is very much Wi-Fi centric. That's how it started life. The quick overview on open roaming is that we have a federation called the Open Roaming Federation that any number of network providers, access providers, and identity providers would join or authenticate to that federation, the Open Roaming Federation. Once they've done that, that enables vastly improved customer experience as far as Wi-Fi endpoints, cell phones, laptops, iPads, things like that. As a traveler or a customer traverses various access networks, provided they are federated to the Open Roaming Federation, that would be a seamless transition between the radio access networks as the customer's device moves around in space. So that's the very short version of what WBA offers today in Open Roaming for Wi-Fi. Essentially, it's secure, scalable, seamless roaming of end devices between federated networks and identity providers. Next slide, please, Will. So what Cisco did is said open roaming, that looks really attractive, particularly if you have mobile things that are moving around, such as, I use the case of the pharmaceutical having to track a vaccine delivery across potentially a large geographic region across multiple different radio types. What we did is for one of the connectors that we developed was for LoRaWAN networks that enable the LoRaWAN network providers to participate in the Open Roaming Federation. We developed what we call a series of connectors, one of which we targeted at LoRaWAN networks, allows again the LoRaWAN network server and the LoRaWAN identity providers, device identity providers, to join the federation. Once they've accomplished that, then the ability of a mobile, say, LoRaWAN asset tracker to traverse multiple access networks is seamless, painless, secure, and highly scalable. Next slide, please, Will. So that proof of concept that we did, we had multiple, in this case, we're showing the beginnings of it. We had 2 network service providers that we were trialing in Switzerland, implementing the LoRaWAN connector for open roaming with 2 different LoRaWAN network service providers as well. Successfully demonstrated that it was practical to roam and both onboard and roam LoRaWAN end devices between these 2 network service providers in a seamless fashion. At the lower right there, you see some demonstration LoRaWAN devices that we had used to confirm that both the onboarding and the access pickup happened between both the visit and the home networks. And as an added advantage, that connector was built upon the passive roaming specification that was developed by the LoRaWANs. Next slide, please, Will. Very quick introduction. The takeaway I'd like to leave you with today is the open roaming. It is possible, we've proven that through in-field proof of concept, that the open roaming infrastructure can be extended to other LPWAN technologies, LoRaWAN, NB-IoT, private LTE, as well as, of course, Wi-Fi, to offer scalable, secure, and seamless roaming for mobile asset trackers, Internet of Things spaces, use cases. I thank you for your attention and look forward to any questions you may have in the upcoming Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That was really insightful. So let us actually move to a bit of a Q&A here and a bit of kind of panel discussion. I have prepared a couple of questions here for our panelists, and let me start with Derek. Actually, I want you to kind of maybe if you can speak more to the cloud platform, how they can make use of the data collected over LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi on the cloud, and where do you see kind of most of the aggregation of the data happening? Is it on the cloud side? Is it on the edge side? And what kind of motivated you guys to make that decision to be either on cloud or the edge?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and I think that one of the things that is important is it's good to have everything in the cloud because you're pulling in a lot of different data sets from the network, from the devices that are connecting, from the edge itself, and then you can combine it all and do like a historical view of what's happening inside the venue and have better insights with having it all together in one big huge data lake, which is something that we've done and put in the cloud. In addition to that, I don't think it's a one place or another. We do also run and store a lot of that data in the edge to make those decisions very quickly. You know, sometimes you need to have policies and make changes to how those networks are working. And so you need to have a lot of that data also on the edge. So it's kind of a hybrid approach to both using edge as well as cloud is what we've taken. And it really depends on each use case and what you're trying to do and how important latency is. One thing I'd also say is the edge is a great place to deal with, you know, this concept of 5 nines all the time on every network, you know, is probably not logical in certain situations. And depending on the cost that you have to do to be able to do that. So we create a lot of degraded mode functions by taking advantage of our gateway on the edge and data that's there on the edge, so that if we do lose connections or connections are slow going back to the cloud, we have the option to be able to make those decisions right there at the venue. Maybe not with all the data, with portions of the data, but at least keep the service running and operational, which is also very important for a lot of these networks.
I think it makes perfect sense. Actually, we've maybe kind of commenting from my side as well on the work that we've been kind of doing in the smart cities. I think it's more or less the same, but kind of a conclusion that we came up to, which is there are applications that can run at the cloud and can kind of better run at the cloud, and there are ones that are kind of delay sensitive, especially when it comes to the smart intersection and making sure that we capture every kind of near miss and all these kind of situations where the edge plays a great role, and we may want to kind of push that decision and push the storage and the decision as close to the devices as possible for the policy changes, as you said, and for the management of the devices and for capturing some of these events live and replying to them in near real time. And for others where it makes more sense to have storage at the cloud, and we can post-process the kind of raw data and look at tendencies and apply some machine learning, AI, and algorithms to make sense of this data. We can also store it at the cloud and make kind of use of the cloud capabilities compared to the kind of somewhat limited capability of edge. But we've reached some similar conclusions. That's great to know. Maybe kind of moving on actually to Paul and the open roaming. I mean, it was really insightful to see how how are you applying the Wi-Fi, like open roaming that was Wi-Fi centric to LoRaWAN. And my question maybe is, how the framework can become the industry standard for IoT and LPWAN, and how it can be maybe adopted by the LoRa Alliance. If you can give us insights on that.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So as you know, WBA is now the steward for open roaming, which started life as a Wi-Fi technology. I think the way we go wider as far as multiple RAN here is to, not unlike we're doing today, socialize the proof of concepts, the availability, the design, that this is applicable to multiple other radio technologies, not just Wi-Fi. I think there's been some socialization already for LoRa Alliance. The other organizations such as for CBRS and private LTE. I think it starts with evangelizing the concept that it's been proven in the field at small scale, and just go after the stakeholders that have interest in it, such as the LoRa Alliance. The network, Remy, as you know, is chair of the Network Operator Forum in the LoRa Alliance. That would be a prime audience, I think, to learn about the technology.
Would you agree?
That's perfect. That's a good segue actually for the a question for Remy here. Maybe actually, Remy, if you can speak more to the rest of the use cases and what you perceive as the value proposition for them of using LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi in their deployments.
Okay, well, so as I said, we had 9 trials led by 11 companies. So today we saw 3 insightful ones, but others also are really meaningful for us. So let me talk about Activity, for instance. Activity and ABWay, French companies, set up a trial on a Volvo truck factories in France for tracking racks used to carry engines, spreading on a 25,000 square meter sites. Rack location is made via Wi-Fi fingerprinting on an ABWay tracker, and data is backhauled to the cloud through the LoRaWAN networks. This use case is planned to expand on other Volvo truck factories across the world. The key benefit here is to have a rapid roll-through production process, optimizing the rack usage and time to delivery to a customer. The second nice example that we have is Lacuna Space. Lacuna Space is a UK-based satellite company connecting LoRaWAN devices to track endangered species like elephant in South Africa, and also to guarantee human safety in these parks. They use the last chip of Semtech, the LR1110, able to use the Wi-Fi and GPS technology for accurate location, and able to backhaul the signal through the satellites with LoRaWAN's technology and standard. So here, of course, the key benefit is to protect endangered animals, but also increase and guarantee the people's safety who are working in parks. Next, I can talk about Carlink. Carlink is a French company. They deployed a dedicated smart traffic infrastructure for retailers, able to bring analytics on people attendance in stores or malls to optimize space organization and give a feedback on commercial campaigns. Carlink solution is based on people counting through Wi-Fi probe requests coming from a smartphone, and able to backhaul this information to the cloud. It's also complemented by Bluetooth beacons. So it says that multi-RAN strategy is also there with other technology. Of course, the benefit is a space optimization in retails, malls, and accurate knowledge of marketing campaign efficiency. And let me finish with a kind of also interesting use case with Neston and Skyhook. They started to implement a trial on a network handover process between Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN to optimize the network coverage and battery performance between the two technologies. So in a way, a device can start running through Wi-Fi and send large amount of data but the battery consumption performance cannot be the best. So in that case, you can switch to the LoRaWAN network, sending lower amount of data and optimizing your battery. This handover process is a kind of disruption. It's new, it's brand new, and we are exciting to look at the NextGen and Skyhook result in the next weeks with, let's say, real use cases. So I think I covered the main use case, Vael, and more to come in the coming white paper.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Remy, and looking forward actually to continue working with you and the WBA members and the LoRa Alliance members for the next revision of the white paper that will have hopefully many more use cases. And I encourage everyone on this call to go ahead and download the white paper and see the value of deploying LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi networks side by side and making usage of the best of the both technologies in the license exempt world. I would like to thank you all, our panelists, for the great discussion and the great insights today from the contributions to the white paper. And that concludes today our panel discussion. Thank you all very much. And back to you, Tiago.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic session. Well, thank you for sharing such an interesting insights. A couple questions come up. One is that I particularly like is quite interesting. So we talked about all these different technologies. So what are the challenges to orchestrate all these interfaces from all these multiple technologies in a single platform? I know maybe, well, you can start, and then I would like to get as well Rami point of view.
Of course. So I think from that panel discussion, I kind of asked similar question actually to Boingo, and I also kind of gave a perspective from Charter. I think it's important when we have all these heterogeneous access networks, would that be Wi-Fi, Irvin also kind of mentioned Zigbee and BLE, and I would say the LoRaWAN and private LTE and 5G, and everything is kind of a heterogeneous, I would say, deployment. So you need that kind of single pane of glass to kind of give you an overview of what your network is, the wired and the wireless portion of it. And you need that to either commission your devices, to manage the devices, to look at the data, and to kind of abstract a little bit that hybrid, I would say, aspect. So you need either that on a cloud level or a kind of an edge level, if your edge is capable of ingesting all this data from different sources and different technologies. And this is actually a feature that even working with the cities and the smart city kind of program that we have here, that's a feature that's somewhat that's kind of a recurring theme where they request that feature. They request to have a cloud platform where they can commission devices from different with different, I would say, underlying technologies, and they can abstract that access technology for us to make sure that we relay the information, we relay the data, and the city to make use, I would say, of that data.
So, Thiago and Vael, it's clear that it has become obvious that the multi-RAN strategy is a key driver for IoT. So we need to kind of unify the way we see the data. There are three challenges here. First, at the two edges, I would say. First, the device identity, how to unify or to manage the device identity from multiple technologies is one of the topics that 5G is working on. Second, you have the roaming challenge. We had a very nice presentation on open roaming. I think that working on open roaming, for instance, on many technologies can be one of the answer. And obviously, the key topic of IoT today is the data model in the clouds. There are many work on that topic, but it's probably the number one topic that should be addressed in the future, along with security, of course. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Remy, and well, I will start now with you, Remy, because he is a perfect bridge to the next question that the audience put. So someone asked, so any interference security issues come up during these trials by using this unlicensed spectrum?
I would say that by DNA, these two technologies are managed to be deployed in unlicensed spectrum with channel plan management, with capability to manage frames and resend frames in case of issue. So by design, these technologies have been set up, ground up to manage this environment. So it was not a specific issue that we saw on the trials.
Okay, thank you, Remy. Well, any feedback from your side?
No, I think I'll echo that. I would say both technologies are, in terms, in terms of access networks, at least there is all provision, as Remy said, for retransmissions, for managing interference and collisions over the air. They're well established by now protocols. We haven't seen any issues in terms of deployment, in terms of security. Both are very secure with the security we know to Wi-Fi. Same for LoRaWAN. We haven't seen any issues of this nature.
Yeah, and one final question from my side, just as almost as a summary. So if you have to summarize in just a few words, what are the main benefits of combining LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi? So I'd like to get your perspective. So at the end of the day, what you see the big benefits?
I will use two words: complementarity and flexibility. So it was developed on the previous presentation, flexibility of the cost-efficient, license-exempt environment, and complementarity. We couldn't find two technologies more complementing each other as LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi. That's the perfect match today and tomorrow.
Thank you, Remy.
I think again, I'll echo that the fact that you have like a technology that is dedicated to kind of a broadband and that can support, I would say, heavy traffic, and on the other, which is Wi-Fi, and on the other hand, you have something more on the LP1, kind of a leader in the LP1 technology, which is LoRaWAN. That gives you really the flexibility to have like a dial where your application, you can tune up and down that dial, and you can play with the throughputs, you can play with the ranges, you can play with the deployment model, and the fact that they're both kind of scalable and they're both secure. So they made, as Remy said, perfect match to work hand in hand to achieve all these use cases we talked about, and we're really looking forward to kind of continuing the journey for the next white paper, as Remy was saying in the recorded, I would say, session.
Fantastic. Well, definitely, I echo your words. Looking forward for the next white paper and collaboration with LoRa Alliance. So thank you so much. Excellent presentations and panel discussion. Okay, we'll move on the agenda.